Yeah.
Okay. Well, good morning, Maria. I'm excited for this episode 2 of launching your business in 3 days.
Yes, I'm super excited.
Yeah, I am excited to pick your brain because I feel like the time that we have worked together, I have seen such impressive work from you in terms of how to articulate what your product is, what your go-to-market strategy is. So I'm excited.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We've had a lot of really fun challenges because we are launching new products. And so how do you make sure those products don't cannibalize, each other? And also how do you make sure you're growing and scaling, but setting yourself up for success so that there's some differentiation between those products. So we've
Yeah.
had some really fun challenges. It's been exciting.
Yeah. Well, so diving into this, if someone has, we're assuming with this series that someone has a problem they want to solve. They've got a good idea to run after, and we're just going to give them the tools that they need to, in 3 days, quick and dirty, launch this business of theirs, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about with Jake setting up a business plan. Now we're going to dive deep into a go-to market plan. What's one of the first steps that you recommend people start with?
So the first step I would have to say is creating your outline. So knowing, the framework I use for that is kind of knowing your business goals and or like your marketing goals if you're a bigger organization. But for the sake of this example, let's focus on just what's your goal, right? You're a solo entrepreneur, you've got a product, you've done the research to Jake's podcast. That's going to be imperative. You need to know your audience. You need to know where they're at. How are you going to contact them? What different channels you're going to leverage. But before we even dig into that, let's say you have all that information. You've identified like, what are your goals? Is it just sales at this point? Is it as opposed to a quantity number of sales? Is it a revenue number that you're trying to hit? Or is it feedback? This is a pre-sale, pre-launch, like a beta program. You're trying to get that feedback, get the product rolling on, make sure it's viable before you throw all your money in on this. So
you're saying those are just 3 options, and whatever kind of fits your preference, they can choose, not
yeah,
necessarily one is better than the other?
exactly. It totally is dependent on, do you have a digital product? Are you a service? Is this just you? Is it you and a team of 2 to 3 people or then some? And so there's going to be different maturity levels. And so therefore that's going to require different outlines. But let's say you know what your goal is, then after you know your goal, you can focus on what we call like an STP, which is your segmentation, your targeting, and your positioning. So that's where you're going to leverage all the research that you did with Jake and coming up with your business plan. So you're going to look at all your audiences, segment them out by buyers, users, if it is a digital product. Sometimes those audiences are separate. And then who are you
Like
going to?
with Weave, right?
Yeah,
A
exactly.
good example is dentistry, where the dentist typically buys it, but the office manager is the one that uses it. And sometimes they'll be the same person.
Exactly.
Okay.
Again, it goes back to your type of product and your maturity level. But as long as you know that, then you can set yourself up for success with a really good framework and outline for your campaign,
Yeah.
which, once you say, okay, this is the segmentations we have available. We've got buyers, we've got users, we've got regions, we've got, whatever, then you can target and say, okay, based off of my goal that I set at the beginning, who am I going to target? How am I going to get there the quickest? And then you can figure out, okay, if that's who I'm targeting, then how am I going to position this for them so that it makes sense, that it resonates with them, that they actually really buy into this product, and they're going to be seeking out solutions for the problems that they have, which
Yeah.
our product can solve for them.
So are you thinking too that, back to targeting, right? That
Mm-hmm.
that it sounds like you could even take a phased approach there. That you target, you might have several different audiences to target, but you roll out slowly to each. You
Yep.
could, right? Or
Totally.
you could do all of them, but just as long as you recognize that they're different, and
Yeah.
then your positioning then would fit into each of those targets. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I would say, typically every organization is different. Every business or idea is different. But there's 3 constraints that I find in my experience everyone always has. You're going to have resourcing constraints. So whether you are 600 employees at Weave and we have 50 engineers, okay, our resourcing constraints for our product building is those 50 engineers. Well, if it's just a solo entrepreneur, you might be the everything. You might be the engineer, the product developer, the marketer,
all the hats.
You're all the hats. So you have really limited resources. So resourcing is one constraint that you have. Another constraint is going to be your budget.
Yep.
So maybe you only have $100 today, and the $100 you have today is going to be the $100 you have for go-to-market tomorrow. And then the third constraint that I find everyone has is going to be your timing. So are you trying to launch this product before a big convention or a big event or something like that? So what I will typically do is I'll look at those 3 constraints and I'll say, okay, which one can I absolutely not budge? And if it's the timing, like, okay, we have to hit this deadline for this conference. Think of Apple and how they do their new product announcements every September. That is an absolute constraint for them. Yeah. So that means they're going to have more influx on the budgeting and the resourcing in order to hit that timing. As an entrepreneur, you might have the opposite. You might have, okay, my budget is my absolute. The $100 is the $100 that I got. So that means you're going to have to be really creative with your resourcing. Who can you get in your network to help you out? Who can mentor you? Who can you get like free internships or programs that you can run to get extra hands on deck? And then also timing. Like maybe you don't launch this month, maybe it's next month because you need a little bit more time to work through those things. So look at your constraints, pick out your priority, look at your outline for your go-to-market, know your goals, know like who you're targeting right now in your positioning. And then to your point earlier where it's like, okay, maybe we do a phase approach. They typically say you have like 4 Ps or something like that you can leverage. And typically that's pricing, product, promotion of that product, and place. Place really is your channel. So, but I think they say like your 4 Ps just to make it easier to remember. And so those are the 4 areas that you can really influence to say, okay, for this phased approach, maybe right now we're targeting this group and we're going to address them in this channel with this type of a promotion. And we're going to do this price and we're going to test that first, see how that works, constantly get feedback from your audience. So, is this resonating with them? Does it make sense? Is this a better product?
No, I like that. It reminds me of, so our first episode with Sarah Grover in Utah Furniture Deals, I don't think she has much of a background in marketing, but I want to bring this up because you can get really strategic and have a lot of things here, but it can be rather intuitive too. For her, she was like, I know who my people are, I know where they're at, and I know when they log on. She posts on Instagram every day at a certain time. It can be as simple as that. Totally.
Yep. And really that's where scaling to the maturity of you and your business comes into play. Because again, there's whole organizations, right, where you have entire headcount dedicated to individuals that just do analysis for this, or just do pricing, or just do like one specialized component of this.
Yeah.
And then on the exact opposite end, like Sarah, she knows that when those mommies put their kids to bed, then that's when they get on Instagram. And that's when she's going to post her furniture deals. Yep. The point being, as long as you've done your research, whether it was super in-depth in your business plan and you needed to do that, or whether it was just getting reviews and recommendations and talking to your customers as you're doing one-off sales, then you'll be set up for success. Just have an eye out, have an ear to the ground, know what people are saying so that you can respond accordingly.
Yeah, I think that's pretty apt. And simple, right?
Yeah, really, you can make it as simple or as complex as you want it to be. And like you said, I think a phased approach is always probably the most, successful, just because it's always the most scalable.
Yeah, and especially if you're talking about like this being a 1 or 2 person show in these first 3 days, right? You need to you can't eat a whale all at once. You eat a whale one bite at
Right.
a time, and you figure it
Right.
out. And launching a business in 3 days, we could go into go to market for like 10 episodes. We're not going to, because this is all we need
Just to get started.
initially. Yeah. Okay, so we've gotten those things. We have our target, our segments, our positioning. What are some of the next few things that someone might consider? Maybe in relation to, and I say this because I feel like you're really good at this, is that verbiage with positioning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now it really comes down to you're focusing on those 4 Ps, so to speak.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
you're gonna focus on, okay, what are the places, or I call them channels personally, but so what are the channels? Is it gonna be email? Is it going to be texting? And really it will be influenced by what do you have available to you today. So today, if you're starting out, you might not have a customer database. You might not have a ton of email addresses. You might not have phone numbers for everybody. And so what do you do? The first thing you could do is you could start out by asking for reviews and sending out products to like a beta program. And so that's just helping you build awareness. As you're building awareness and you're positioning this as something that's going to be really relevant to your audience, and you can do that targeting, you can position it as like, hey, we're here to build this together. I hear you, I see you, I want your input on this. I want this to be the best product it could possibly be. So you can get that buy-in from being a collaborator. And I know a lot of people get worried about, oh, the product isn't perfect yet. I don't want to push it out there. What if somebody else sees it? What if they steal my idea? I guarantee you that's not going to be an issue. As somebody who has launched and failed at least 5 businesses, that's not even an issue, because realistically, if somebody else is doing something similar, then it could be going to a different audience. It could be, everyone is unique and the product is unique. And so therefore, like, the way they're going to market it, the way it's going to sit with people, everything like that is just so different that if you wait for it to be perfect, you will never push it out. You will never get there.
And I might even make a plug for a book I read recently called Creative Confidence here, where, when we do this, when we're in that mindset of scarcity, we pull in, we don't want someone to steal our idea. We don't roll forward. We're limited. I'm having a hard time articulating this. Our ideas start coming in,
Right.
and then instead, if we just get moving, and even if we're embarrassed a little bit by that first prototype, that first solution, that first website, whatever, that's okay, because you'll get feedback and you'll be able to move forward more in the right direction and become rooted in the problem you're solving, as opposed to in the solution you've produced, where then you can get emotional and defensive and say, no, I spent so much time here. Whereas if you bring it out earlier, you're incorporating that feedback and delivering a better product or service.
Totally. And I think, maybe Kent will dig into this when he talks about building a website, but even if you aren't there yet and you're not ready to build a website, you and I talk about this all the time at work. Let's just get a landing page up, because we know a competitor will. And even if we don't have it all figured out yet, does not matter what's happening in the back of the house. The customer's not going to know.
Yeah.
Let's get something to market now. Let's put up a landing page that just has an email capture, so that today you can start getting those email addresses and building that list. So a week from now, a month from now, whatever it is, you're starting with 100 email addresses as opposed to 0, and you can already hit the ground running. And then at that point, like, you've got some reviews, you sent out some sample products, and all you asked for in return was a review, or, some email addresses to sign up on your landing page, and you've got some phone numbers or some sort of database you can start to keep track, even if it's in a spreadsheet and not Salesforce, even if it's just in your own, like,
or HubSpot,
Yeah, exactly.
Be a good one when you're maybe a month or 2 down the road. But there's such huge value in being first. And that's why, like, you've got to balance that research and preparation with a little bit of risk taking, a little nervousness of just getting out there and being okay with that, because it can mean a lot to just launch first and start to build that awareness and brand recognition, even though it's not perfect.
And that's where I think the messaging comes into play, is if you're willing to take ownership and stand in a space of, hey, this is the best that I've got today, and I'm confident in what I've got, I want to share that with you, but I'm also committed to making it the best it can be. And so obviously you might not spell that out explicitly, hey, this is what we've got right now, it's as good as it's gonna get, you know,
deal with it.
Maybe you're not gonna word it like that.
But
you do want to make sure that authenticity and that tone and that commitment to collaboration comes across in your messaging, because that's what's going to resonate more so than say, oh, here's a stone cold buy now product, especially when you are starting out, you are a solo entrepreneur. This really is entrenched in your network and your relationships. Sure, you can go out and buy an email list. There's tons of them, and you can target them by region, and you can get really scientific about it, and there's more expensive and less expensive. There's an email list for everyone's budget, but realistically, starting out, I know for me personally, I didn't buy any lists. It was all based off of word of mouth. When I was launching a product, who did I know? Who was going to help me get this out? How can I leverage search terms or other channels like Instagram ads or something like that, depending on my audience and where they were? And then how can I just make sure that the message that came across came from me, because I'm the face of my product. This is obviously speaking on behalf of like a solo entrepreneur, not a Weave or a big organization, but they're buying because of you. Otherwise they could go to a Nordstrom, they could go to a Walmart, they could go to a big box, and that's not what they're doing. They're going to you because they love and support you. So how can you infuse that voice?
Right. Well, I want to even bring up something from someone I follow on Instagram. They kind of called out the practice of, hey, follow this account, and tag this many friends, and you'll get entered to win this thing. And that's how they gain followers, not only for themselves, but for these other brands that they're collaborating with or promoting. And this woman was like, I hate that. Like, that's not organic. People don't like that. Like, and to Jake's point, and I feel like you're really hitting that point too, of authenticity. Just be you. Like, a lot of people will be drawn to you if you are just authentic. And she got a lot of responses when she posted that, from people saying like, hey, thank you, but also other businesses being like, you know what, I agree, but it's hard. Like, it's hard to gain an organic following. But I think it's worth it. You end up getting more loyal customers, people who respect your brand. And it's easier, like if you think of like an NPS scale and you get like 9s and 10s promoters. It's easier to start off with a great promoters, evangelists of your product, than to have people thrown across that scale and trying to recover from detractors or bad reviews or not so positive opinions about you, your product, services, business, whatever.
Well, and a lot of the times, I mean, again, I can only speak from my own personal experience, but I know I have fallen into that trap where I've followed 10 people to win something on Instagram. And guess what? 2 weeks later, I realized I'm actually not a big fan of their content. And I tried to, like, you know, maybe wait it out, see some variety, see like, okay, what's their messaging and their imagery and stuff like that for a couple weeks. But eventually I end up unfollowing them if it wasn't an authentic follow in the first place.
Yeah.
So I find that if you're going to go that Instagram approach, then you're better off to really spend the time, even though I know limited resources, right? It's just you. But even to Sarah's point, if it's late at night after the kids go to bed and you spend 20 minutes on Instagram a night and you're engaging with people, something you can do, and again, I caution this on the side of be authentic, be, you know, truthful to like what you actually would say if this was someone you were going to see in person. But if you find an account that you like, or you see another account that is a competitor product of yours and you see who's following them, you can go through like either hashtags or their followers or something, find people that you can connect with and actually engage, like comment on their post, start a dialogue with them, send them a DM to see if they'd be interested in beta testing your product. Like, don't go the mass route of, oh, well, let's just throw it out there to everyone and see what sticks.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's what I would say in terms of messaging and positioning. That's what I would say in terms of channels. We talked a little bit about channels. I would say if you've got the email addresses, that's great. You can do email marketing is a big one, right? That's a great way to segment your list so that you know, hey, this person signed up through a beta program. This person signed up from a sale that we had on our website.
Right.
And then you can target your emails and the content to them for future campaigns.
Right. So, I mean, there's that purchasing of email lists, but you can also, and we'll probably go through this with Kent and the website, but build a way on your website to get people to sign up for product, service, newsletters, whatever, and just organically get your email list.
Yep. And then there's obviously social media, whether it's paid or organic is you know, beside the point, but you can do sponsored content if it's LinkedIn or Instagram, you know, stuff like that, Facebook ads. And nowadays, you know, I think people get really intimidated thinking, I'm not a marketer. I don't know, like, yeah, I want to do a Facebook ad, but I don't want to throw $1,000 or $250 out for an ad that I don't even know if anyone's going to see it. And I would say that's the billboard approach of traditional marketing, that if someone's not really entrenched in marketing day in, day out, they maybe haven't seen some of the progressions in some of these tools that we have available to us today. And so it's a lot simpler than you think. A lot of these platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, they run you through questionnaires and they just ask you, like, what's your budget? How much do you want to spend? Who are you trying to target? Do you have an email list you want to update? Yes or no? Either way is great. Like, we can still make this work. And you're going to see the return on investment. Like, you're going to see, hey, this performed really well for you. It's not a billboard. You know exactly what happened, how many eyes saw it, how many people clicked on it. And then you can decide for yourself, like, okay, look, that worked really well. Let's do it again. Or, hey, maybe that's not the best approach for our product and we should focus on a different channel.
Right. And we'll have a whole episode on social media and how to approach that as well. Because it's several channels within a channel.
Yep, totally. And so you can, you know, you want to focus on your positioning, your placement, and then it's really the promotion. So what's that campaign? And that's where you think back to your original outline of, okay, what's our goals? Who are the people that we're contacting? We know our audience. How are we contacting them? And then what's the message that plays in over that as like an umbrella? And so you can really leverage that. And then you can fine tweak and say, okay, is it pricing that needs to be changed, you know, now? Is it bundling that we need to experiment with? Like, what do we do? And it's just a series of small tweaks. And so that's probably the biggest thing as to why it's so important to get started today and make progress instead of waiting for perfection, is because it's never going to be perfect. Even when you are a 600 plus company like we talk about this all the time. We are never going to be perfect, but this is the product that we have. How can we get it out as quickly, but also as efficiently, right? We want to make sure the product is effective and it's an efficient launch as possible, so that we can start making all those tweaks and all those tests along the way.
No, I like that. And I think, like, with the promotion, right? And Jake talked about this in his episode, and he called it the hook, you know, whatever it is that you're offering to get them in the door. And you're going to have to look at how you're pricing things. And it's not uncommon for entrepreneurs to underprice. And you'll get a hang of things, and we'll go through a whole episode with Jordan about margin and finances and all of that. But in these first 3 days, just do some quick, like, napkin math, right? And say, okay, if I want to make this much per product I sell or per service I provide or whatever it might be, you know, you want to break down more or less the inputs, your hours and your supply to create those things. And then say, okay, what is the minimum I need to make there? you can price accordingly, and then offer, like, I mean, I feel like every retail website I go on to, especially for the first time, immediately offers 10% off my order.
Oh yeah,
and so you
absolutely.
can go with that, like, market standard, right? And just offer a 10% discount for a first time order.
Yep. And there's even cart abandonment. Also, I'd say that's a standard as well. And for those that aren't as familiar with cart abandonment, it's you put something in your cart, you're shopping online, and then obviously, yeah, I do this all the time, mainly because I'm waiting for the deal. I put something in my cart, and then I leave the website, and then I wait for
you've left some things in your cart.
Yeah, come back. Yes, come back and get 10% off. Okay, I don't mind.
Free shipping. Okay.
Exactly. So there's some pretty standard best practices that when you are looking at promotions or marketing, like a little bit of Google goes a long way. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
A little bit of Googling, a little bit of testing, just be open to constantly iterating, and it'll go a long way. And then I think what you'll start to see is that as you gain this confidence in your product and in your marketing strategy, then you can start to scale as your business matures. And then you can really start to look at the customer journey. And that's something that as a bigger organization, we're really focused on, is because now we almost have too many resources, right? You go from solo entrepreneur to, okay, now I'm going to add Debbie. Debbie's going to do fulfillment, and I'm going to do point of contact and purchasing, And so now what is she doing versus what I'm doing? That works really well because it's A or B. There's not a ton of variables. But I know for me personally, when I started a business, we hired a bunch of interns, and we worked with the University of Utah to do a internship program. And we would have probably about a dozen interns at one time. And then we would switch them out every semester. And sometimes we would get, repeat interns, which would be great. But otherwise, it's like, okay, there's 15 of us now. So what are we doing? And even though this isn't paid for them, this is, or even for me at the time, right? I'm like hemorrhaging money left and right, but it's still a matter of like, how can we be organized and how can we all be aware of what everyone's doing? And so I don't want to reach out to a customer 10 times and bombard them with my messaging if someone else on my team has already done that. And so that really becomes a bigger issue in larger organizations. But even as you are scaling, you want to look at that customer journey and say like, okay, how did they become aware of us? How did they become, acquired? Depending on, I'm going to use digital terms here and say acquisition, activation, like engagement. But if it's a digital product, like how did we acquire them? When did they download our app? How did we activate them? When did they actually start engaging with us versus, how are we getting them to re-engage or refer customers and keep that cycle going? And then that's what you'll start to focus on as you scale and look to grow your business. But none of that matters when you're just trying to start. Just start, and you'll pick out one or two areas of those customer journeys that, okay, we should focus on this because this is what we do really well. So let's squeeze the hell out of this lemon, and let's make sure everybody knows about this point in our customer journey because this is what we do the best. And it's either our product differentiator, it's our shipping that's super fast overnighted, it's our whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Well, and even with it being a 1 or 2 person business, the customer journey is still really valuable because, so Jake and I talked about how in terms of that awareness, brand recognition, it takes anywhere from 7 to 10 contact interactions, things for someone to then make a purchase. And like recognizing that kind of helps with your emotions and not getting too frustrated. But then what happens after that? Once they purchase with you, what happens? How often can they be recurring? When would you be reaching out, and how? Because it is way more expensive to get a new customer than it is to retain a customer.
Absolutely.
And it's even more effective to look at your monetization than it is to really look at retention. So then like as you get going, you can start to dive into these things. But even in these first 3 days when we're launching, sketching that out, even no matter how rough it is, will be
Yeah.
tremendously valuable, because then you can start to focus on, okay, yeah, I'll have these things that bring them in, but I want to focus on killing it. We're in an experience economy. Everybody is all about brand loyalty. So how are you going to nail that as well?
Yeah, totally. And I think to your point, it doesn't need to be super sophisticated. Even if it
Yeah.
is back of the napkin math, you pretty much know, right? Is your product a mattress? If so, people probably only going to buy one every 5 to 8 years, if that,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so if it is a energy drink, then yeah, people can consume that daily if that's what they want to do. So really, you can know your product, know the research that you've done, and then you can do your quick back of the napkin math to say like, okay, I think a customer would buy or rebuy from me twice a year. And then you can say, is that seasonally? Perfect. If it's seasonally, say a jacket, and they're going to buy it, for winter or in the fall or something like that versus a spring summer jacket, then let's do our promotions during those times. And let's tie our promotions and our marketing and our channel and our communication first leading up to that. If you know this is the deadline, it's a seasonal thing. So by the time we get to fall, the customer needed to hear from us at least 7 times, and spacing that out so that it's not just, well, once every day this week, right? You want to make sure that you're not bombarding them and there's some ebbs and flows, and you're creating space for a dialogue and a conversation, not someone that's just constantly hitting you with a to-do list or a demand of like, buy now or do something like that. So once you create that dialogue, then you can create some seasonality into your marketing plans and really do some analysis, to your point, even if it is just simple, to say, how can you be the most successful? How can you project out, okay, I know people are going to rebuy at this time, so the money and the sales that I need to do now need to hold me over until fall, if that's what you're looking at as seasonality. Or, hey, this is something that people could, it's a consumable, we could sell this in packs of dozens. So all that comes into play, but you'll start to see some of that organically formulate as you launch. You'll see people come back or say, oh no, I got what I needed, thank you, and the experience is over, so to speak. So at that point, then you need to worry about like a viral coefficient, like how often are they going to refer people to you? How important are reviews going to be then, so that you can go out and get that other one time or sale or something to that effect.
Yeah. Well, and maybe this is a good opportunity to transition into recommended tools for these sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But first is our few that Weave offers, right? So we've got email marketing, where we can, you can do one-offs, but you can also just do your whole list through Weave, and coordinate some marketing efforts through email. We also help collect reviews, because let's face it, again, like being in an experience economy, like, and people value the opinions of a crowd of strangers, right? We're going to have testimonials on our website, of course.
Yeah.
We're going to promote ourselves and say that we're fabulous, of course, because we are. But there's so much weight to be had in reviews, and not just reviews in the sense that you've gotten a good rating, but that you're maintaining that rating. Because if you have 4.5 stars and 150 reviews, but your latest review was 3 or 4 months ago, it can be like, okay, well, are they still in business? What happened? Why isn't anybody reviewing them?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
and also making sure that you're updating that business page on Google. If you are a brick and mortar, or even if you aren't, but specifically if you're brick and mortar, you have your hours, you have your website, you have your reviews section, and then you have your phone number so that it can actually accept text messages. And so that's another thing that I know Weave offers is, when you're talking about meeting your customers where they're at, everyone wants to text. It is so much easier to text. And
and you think of like getting someone, meeting someone where they're at is what made me think of this, is whatever behavior they're engaging in, like you think, if I'm going to try and do ads for a podcast, it is not going to be advantageous for me to put on a billboard, listen to this podcast.
Right.
That's a completely, people are driving, you know, whatever. You think of like, not only how to meet them where they are metaphorically, but actually literally, physically, digitally, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of that. They're on their phone looking at their business. They click a button and it pulls up their text app. You know, things like that, like of just really decreasing that barrier to entry, increasing your convenience. You'll see such a huge influx of leads when you start to do those things.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. Some non-weave resources that I would recommend too. You know, this one might seem a little off color, but there is a book. It's actually called, I think, like the Product Manager Interview. I'll have to look up. I think it's by Louis C. Lynn, maybe. But I use his book time and time again. It's like my Bible. And so for people that aren't as familiar, product management really means, you know, for a software company, you are the CEO of that product. And so you're having to think like an entrepreneur, and you're having to think, okay, what are my resources? What is my budget? What is my timing? What's my go-to-market? What's the product? What's the pricing? Like you're having to think through all of these things for this specific product, and then go back to the business and say, okay, this is what my recommendation would be for every single one of these areas. And something that I think Louis Lynn does really well is he breaks down, mainly because he's trying to help people get jobs at Facebook, Google.
Someone must have come to the door.
Yes, we have people here to fix our flooring. But anyway, so Louis C. Lynn, he really helps people acquire jobs at any of the big tech companies. And so he helps them break down in this book, like what are the different exercises so that you can think through what are the different type of interview questions. But he does it in a way that's very practical for people that are starting out with a business and they don't necessarily know how to write a business plan. They don't actually know how to do pricing, or they don't know standard models that consultants like McKinsey or Bain & Co. use. And he breaks it all down like really simply to say, okay, if you're going to do marketing, jump to the marketing chapter. And these are frameworks that are like standard for consultants. And if you're going to do pricing, jump to the pricing chapter and focus on, you know, these different ways to think about pricing. And so I think he's someone that, even though I'm not in product management, I specialized now in product marketing management. I still constantly go back to that book just to be like, okay, what were frameworks he would suggest? What's another way to get creative about thinking about this problem? And so checking out that book would be a definite one. The other thing I would say is templates. Do not reinvent the wheel. You're an entrepreneur.
Yeah, seriously.
You are starting out, you know, and I guarantee if anything that you're looking for, if you Google whatever it is that you're looking for and just put the word template on the end of it, you will get something that is usable.
Yep.
And at least be 80% of the way there. So all you have to do is focus on the last 20%. So really optimize your time spent, because you are a limited resource, and say, hey, I need a marketing calendar template.
Yeah.
See what comes up, see what you like, pull down what you can use the most of. Obviously, you'll have to rework and tailor everything because, as we stated earlier, the maturity of your business and the life cycle of what you're in and your product is going to vary, but you'll get a good percentage of the way there. So
yeah,
those are my two big things, is just leverage the templates that are out there. Google's got you covered. Medium's got you covered. I think Quora, something like that, Quora or something like that, they've got you covered. Just Google it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you know, find some books and resources to help you out along the way, and some partners. So whether it's Weave or Salesforce or whatever the tool is that you need, whatever your gap is, fill it with a partner that knows what they're doing, and they'll help you get there.
Oh, that's perfect. I think you've given everyone a lot to chew on. But yeah, thanks again, Maria.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here. Thank you for this opportunity, Casey.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to that episode of We've Connected. Make sure to hit subscribe down below so you get notified of any time we add a new episode. We'll catch you next time.